I'm doing great, Paul. Hanging out on a Monday. I'm a little wet from being out jogging this morning. The weather kind of stinks, but hey, it's all good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I hope it cools down even more. Muzzleloading season is this weekend, so I'm hoping hoping that the deer start moving. Yeah, Lee, the reason I want to have you on, number one, is because a couple of weeks ago or a month or so ago, your opponent, Republican opponent in the upcoming, is Bob Ballinger, who beat Brian King in a close race.
Yeah.
I wanted to have you on because I made the mistake. I was playing the audio of Bob Ballinger saying no legislator in Little Rock is benefiting from being down there, and of course he got kind of laughed at pretty hard. And I said, hey, he's a senator elect, and that was wrong, and I corrected it a couple times, but I thought, as much as it drives the Marble Palace crazy that, we give libertarians a voice on the program, and we give anybody a voice, really, if they want to have an honest conversation and dialogue. I wanted to have you on, Lee, and I just want to start off, why are you running for Senate District 5?
It's where I live. I've lived in this part of the state for about 2 years now. I'm kind of a newcomer to this area, but I've lived in Arkansas all my life. And I see the everyday struggle of Arkansans. It's definitely not easy. And I'm really thankful for your reporting up there and just all the conduits, every single one of them. I know it's one big organization, and I listen to your program as much as I can, and I read it all and I soak it all up. And it's been a big influence on me, to be honest. I'm not kissing butt or anything. And it's once I got into this and saw how corrupt things were for my district and how far Ballinger is from representing anybody really in District 5, much less Arkansas, I just became filled with more and more fire. And I have a bit of a political activist background. I started out probably as more of a progressive when I was really young. I've seen that movement from the inside, and what's wrong with it from the inside, frankly.
Yeah, what do you think is wrong with progressivism?
Big government in general. I'll give them some credit in that they're honest about what they're for. And my big problem with the Republican Party in Arkansas is they claim to be for small government, yet we still get Obamacare. Yet we still get all these big government programs, not just big government, but corruption that the likes of which I've just never seen before. And I've paid attention to politics my whole life, and there's always corruption, yeah. But big government is the snake that eats itself. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And, yeah, we need some government. I've been working on ballot access for the Libertarian Party for the last few years in a few different states, as well as Arkansas, and I helped get the term limits initiative on the ballot here as well. And so I've talked to a lot of people throughout the country and Arkansans, and look, most people are fairly moderate. And I think really what libertarians need to offer is a reasonable balance between those two sides of the coin without giving up on who we truly are, which is trying to get government out of your life and giving the individual a true chance to shine.
Yeah, and I think that is definitely a message that should resonate with young people, and I think it is. I think it's growing more and more in terms of the idea that, hey, liberty, voluntary cooperation is way, way, way better than forced cooperation. So when did you make the turn? What was it in your life where you said, hey, this progressivism is not for me? I think limited governments is better.
It was the gun issue that really, really bothered me. I actually grew up in kind of a Democrat home. I wouldn't say Democrat home. Let me rephrase.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everybody out there. Thanks so much for being with us, and we really appreciate it. Building this Liberty machine together, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. If you would like to contribute to the program, you could also sound off on our Facebook and YouTube pages. It's Conduit News, facebook.com/Conduit News or Conduit News at YouTube. Really appreciate everybody out there. We had some technical difficulties for those of you who are listening via the internet. We did have some technical difficulties most of the program in the second hour. I think in the second hour it started at about 7:15. The entire building lost all internet connectivity, which actually meant that for about 8 minutes there, we had no contact with the rest of the affiliates as well on terrestrial radio, and so I was able to get that back up and going, just getting the audio there using basically a Verizon hotspot. So we did that, but as far as a type of hotspot that can handle the amount of bandwidth and upload that we need, for video, we weren't able to bring you the video back. Or we weren't ever able to continue to broadcast online, except for I think everything came back on about 2-3 minutes before. So what happened was we weren't able to interview State Representative Mark Lowry yesterday around 7:30 because we had no phone capabilities. Good news is we've rescheduled. We'll be talking with State Representative Mark Lowry an hour from now about his race. He's a Republican. He's got a Democrat opponent in the upcoming, okay? Then at 7:33 this morning, we'll be talking with a candidate for the Arkansas Supreme Court. Mr. David Sterling is back on the program. Of course, we have a competitive race there between David Sterling and current Justice Courtney Goodson. So we'll be talking with David Sterling. Really excited about that. If you missed any of the show yesterday because, let's say you're one of these people that only consumes the show digitally, go to conduitnews.com and click on the YouTube videos of Tim Loggins, as well as Mr. Casey Copeland, who was on yesterday. He's a libertarian candidate running for State House over in the western part of the state. And you can check out those interviews, although Casey did get cut off in mid-sentence because we lost phones. But anyway, I think we're back up and going. So we had, technical hiccups yesterday. Let's hope that we don't repeat any of that, and we'll do our best, everything on our end, to make sure we don't. All right, I'm going to start with some of the news. We have the left in this country, and they are... Well, they just see red. Ever since 2016, they are blinded by a rage that is unlike something. I've never seen anything like it. I guess there may be people, that live longer than I have that maybe have seen the political discourse in this country get to where it is. Where you have Maxine Waters. Can you imagine during 2010 and the Tea Party movement when everything was rising up and people were protesting, saying we're taxed enough already, and they were having these rallies and everything else, and then there were politicians that would come to the rallies that would, invigorate people. But can you imagine if Republican politicians were telling Republican voters or Tea Partiers to take to the streets, and if you see a member of the Obama cabinet eating at a restaurant, you need to get a crowd together? Can you imagine what the media, what the common thread that would be pushed out there, the line of thought, rightfully so, would be, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, we can have political disagreements and not hate the other person to the degree where you're no longer allowed to feed yourself in public in peace. But that's what we're seeing from the left. And what does the media do? Do they show concern? Do they cover the events? Do they look at the ideology of Antifa? Do they, condemn what's going on? No, instead, they harass people. The people over at CNN harass the guests that dared to call these rabbles mobs, saying that they were mobs. And, of course, that's what they were. Of course, that's what they were. You can just look at the Kavanaugh hearings. Those were mobs trying to beat down the doors and claw their way into the Supreme Court chambers while Brett Kavanaugh was being sworn in. That was a mob, okay? Yeah, they were protesting, but when you start to pound on the door and you start to try to claw your way into the door to open it, I mean, that's something that mobs do, okay? Protests are more organized, saying, hey, we're here, this is the message we're trying to get out, not just this blind, like, let's everyone scurry and just, claw your way into a Supreme Court building. I mean, that's exactly what it is. So, this started with Maxine Waters, where she basically was, and I've said this before, the difference on the left between a protest and a riot. The line is thinner and thinner, right? So it's no surprise that, you see stories about people who are Republicans getting attacked, and we see that in this story here. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. 2 GOP candidates assaulted in Minnesota. Attacks come as state Democrats suspend staffer for a beheading post. Interesting. From Bill McMorris. The Minnesota Democrat Party has suspended a spokesman for calling for violence against Republicans, even as 2 GOP candidates have been assaulted in suspected politically motivated attacks. The Democratic Farmer Labor Party has suspended communications staffer William Davis for 1 week without pay after making a Facebook post joking that Democrats would bring Republicans to the guillotine on November 7th, the day after the midterm elections. Minnesota Republican Party Chairman Jennifer Carahan said the suspension was not enough, calling for his immediate firing in the aftermath of separate attacks against Republican candidates. She said she's been subjected to numerous death threats during her tenure as a state party leader and that death threats are no laughing matter. Go to this other story from citypages.com. Apparently, there was an anarchist walking along a street in Minnesota, and he decided he didn't like the political campaign signs, the yard signs of State Representative Sarah Anderson. Sarah Anderson saw this man do this. She jumped from her car and told the man to stop. He refused, Anderson, and then claimed that he was an anarchist and could do whatever he wanted. So the politician did what any red-blooded American would do. She tried to catch the incident on video. But the anarchist was having none of that, so he cursed her, backed her into the street, and told her to go kill herself. The man then walked to a nearby BP, presumably to stock up on Flaming Hot Cheetos and Mountain Dew, the go-to source of sustenance for any self-respecting anarchist/nut job. Anderson gave chase in her car, and the man charged her again, leaning through her window and punching her in the arm. This is a really well-written piece. As a general rule, this is not a very effective place to punch someone, but he was irrational, according to State Representative Anderson, just completely irrational. But listen to this. The sign incident, meaning he had some anarchists ripping up signs, ripping up yard signs. This came 2 days after a fellow Republican House candidate in Minnesota, Shane Meekland, was punched in the face in St. George Township, northeast of St. Cloud. Meekland was campaigning in a bar/restaurant when a much larger man approached. He described the conversation as amiable until Meekland invoked the hallowed name of the middle class. The man, we can only assume, did not wish to hear another politician yammering about A, how much he'd do for the middle class, or B, how badly his nemesis was losing the middle class. Was hosing the middle class. So he punched the candidate in the face. There is no recurring motive among the victims here. Anderson could perhaps be described as a moderate if said species is not yet extinct. She's well considered among Republicans up in Minnesota. This is the this this is the state of Minnesota. I mean, this is not like I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say it's a blue state, right? But it is. It's a they thought Al Franken was a great guy. I mean, they've elected Al Franken to Senate a few times, right, before he had to resign. So the left, wouldn't have just a glaring double standard. But anyway, it's a pretty blue place. So you got a lot of outraged folks, right? You got a lot of outraged leftists in Minnesota, and I mean it's open season on Republicans. That's what it looks like to me. And I think you have a media that's just completely silent about this. And what do they do? The media, the left, they're outraged. About President Trump saying that the press is the enemy of the American people. They're more outraged on that, crossing their fingers. Oh, please let some right wing guy somewhere, slug a reporter or assault Jim Acosta at one of these Trump rallies. And I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it hasn't. I mean, you look at the Tea Party and you look at what's going on, or you look at what went on in the Tea Party and look at how peaceful that movement was compared to what's going on now. And you got to remember, do you remember the actual group, the first group, if you'll kind of go down memory lane with me, the first group that was a response to the Tea Party? You remember what it was? It was a group called Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street was a group that really was just kind of a snapshot of what is to come, of how bad it would get. Aside from the stories of the tents and the rapes that took place, that's when we saw just how much the left doesn't like capitalism. We saw how much they could really just throw a complete societal temper tantrum over, maybe it is a real, originally the movement was, Wall Street got the bailouts, Main Street America got hosed and everything else, but it grew from that into, I think this whole idea of capitalism is just wrong. It's greedy, and then you realize it was just completely a socialist movement, yada, 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 and people started defecating on the street because they're there, right? They're occupying. And you got business owners that had, their businesses vandalized. They had to shut down. They couldn't even get to their places of business because it was such a mess down there. I feel like that was a taste. I mean, that was the Occupy Wall Street was the precursor to Antifa. For sure, I think you would have to agree with that. Right? I mean, I don't remember, but maybe Joe, you can look this up. I'm trying to remember, but I don't think that Occupy Wall Street people were covering their faces. Were they covering their faces at that point? You went from Occupy Wall Street. How many current Antifa protesters out there in the movement of Antifa were there during Occupy Wall Street, were in New York during Occupy Wall Street? I'd love to know. But I don't remember seeing people with their faces covered during Occupy Wall Street. You'd have so you'd have some of them wearing the Guy Fawkes mask. Guy Fawkes, the guy who tried to blow up Parliament, remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. But for the most part, they don't have, you can see their faces. Now, the Antifa people, they cover their faces like they're, some sort of masked vigilante. That's what they're doing up in Portland. You had the violence that erupted in Portland over the last few days between the Patriots Prayer Group and then you have the Antifa people. We are the 99%. Do you remember that slogan? We are the 99%. Do you remember that? Wow. That was really the first response to the Tea Party movement, right? It was like a counter movement. And we saw how really desperate the left can get. And, of course, the Democrats embraced Occupy Wall Street. They rejected any of the clear negativity that really was. I mean, I know the media wanted you to think the Tea Party was just crazy and really, really negative. Occupy Wall Street, they were the negative ones. I mean, they were that was the movement that where you saw, wow, this is how far the left is willing to go. And with Antifa, they've taken it a step further. And that's what we're seeing. We're going to take a break. Joe, thanks for I know the audience didn't see the photos, but I'm seeing them. Yeah. Yeah, I know. One of those photos, not appropriate. Anyway, we're going to take a break, and we're going to reset here. Don't go anywhere. We're getting more news to get to. Got a Treasury official who's been arrested for leaking information to BuzzFeed, apparently. Also, some Arkansas news about what the Arkansas Supreme Court is doing, as well as the Asa Hutchinson campaign for governor asking for an ad to be removed, a Democratic ad from Jared Henderson to be removed off of radio because they're too expensive, apparently. We'll tell you about that later on as well. Don't go anywhere.
My grandparents come from an age in Arkansas when everybody was a Democrat.
Yep.
And I'm sure you know this. This was Arkansas was all Democrat back then. You talk about Winthrop Rockefeller. My grandfather loved him, and last vote he voted was Obama before he died. And isn't it
weird that Rockefeller was a Republican and he comes here? We're all Democrats here in the state back in the day, and like 80% Democrat, and yet somehow Winthrop Rockefeller comes in and he's like, he's a Republican, but everybody votes for him. I think that's such an anomaly in history.
Well, it is really interesting, and to get back to what I was saying, I grew up in a household that I didn't really grow up around guns. My uncle was actually shot at a young age and lost his sight. He just passed away.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, folks, Our friends to the north in Missouri, they have a decision to make. They got a decision whether or not to re-elect Senator Claire McCaskill, who is a Democrat, who is not on board with anything about moving the country, continuing the country in the current trajectory that it's going. And so James O'Keefe of Project Veritas, who I consider to be a journalist, the media thinks that he's some sort of guerrilla. Well, they say he's guerrilla journalist, but that's so frustrating to me. I remember, okay, I grew up watching ABC News, right? I grew up watching ABC News, and Peter Jennings, really liked Peter Jennings, the late Peter Jennings. Now, I know he was a leftist, okay? I know that. And I know, of course, his coverage of the September 11th attacks. I mean, he stayed up all night. I don't know if you remember that about Peter Jennings. It was pretty incredible. But this was back in the day. This was different. But things were a little different than they are now. But I grew up watching Peter Jennings, and I grew up watching, believe it or not, TGIF. Okay, that was an ABC Friday night programming where you had, what'd you have? Full House, Perfect Strangers, Family Matters. You go far enough back, you'll get to that, just the 10 of us. Anyway, after TGIF on Fridays, what came on? 2020 with Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters. And 2020, they would have these reports from John Stossel. What did John Stossel do? Now, keep in mind, yes, I know John Stossel, the now professed libertarian that realizes, who went on his own journey about the benefits, pitfalls of big government. Can government actually do the things that they claim? And the answer John Stossel finds a lot is, no, actually they can't. I mean, we try, but we actually are really terrible at it, so why take the money from the people in the first place to try to attempt something that they do so poorly? Yeah, I know. That's like, I agree with that. But John Stossel, what would he do? He would do these reports where he would go in with a hidden camera. There were journalists all across the networks, not just John Stossel, that would go in. They would be on a story, and they would go in with a hidden camera. They wanted to know what people would say when they thought they were alone in private, and then they would play it on the air. That's not guerrilla journalism. That's journalism. Well, Claire McCaskill of Missouri now is all bent out of shape because there was somebody in her campaign, either a paid staffer or a volunteer. The campaign won't say. Project Veritas won't say. And they got a lot of other, people working for Claire McCaskill to say things like, well, yeah, we don't take money from Planned Parenthood directly because they know that would upset a lot of Republican voters who might vote for Claire McCaskill, or it might upset some of our moderate Democrats in Missouri who will vote for Claire McCaskill because they don't like abortion. But Planned Parenthood figures out ways for us to get help from them. They figure out ways to help us that are, that you can't really trace as much. She said things, then you had other people talking about guns. Well, she can't really come out and say, what she feels about guns and bans and that sort of thing. Anyway, it has apparently set the state of Missouri on fire, this undercover video. Well, so Claire McCaskill is now demanding an investigation. She's demanding her Republican opponent, who's the Attorney General of Missouri, she's demanding that he launch some sort of a special prosecutor to investigate Project Veritas and James O'Keefe for simply engaging in an act of journalism and getting these radical leftist staffers to say what they really think, which is, I mean, if we're honest about it, they believe in gun confiscation, they believe in abortion on demand for birth control, and a whole lot of other stuff that's probably akin to socialism.
Years ago, and that's just to give you an idea of the attitude on guns that I grew up with. Not anti, just not really around it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so, the way progressives kind of cast themselves is from the heart, and I think that's why you see so many kids on college campuses all around the country. That's what they're kind of clinging to, because they're seeing it from a heart level. And they need, they need to see the perspective from the other side, and I really think they have. But it was the gun issue, Paul, that really kind of pulled me to the other side. And I really don't believe in there being any kind of restrictions, except if you're a violent criminal out there. Sure, we can restrict that. But other than that, we don't need any kind of gun restrictions. Arkansas doesn't need that, and that's frankly not what Arkansans believe in.
We're talking with Lee Evans. He's a Libertarian candidate for State Senate District 5 here in the state of Arkansas. You mentioned the corruption in Arkansas, which is great right now. We still don't know how far this is going to go, how high up it's going to go.
Yep.
You talk about how you think a lot of people might be fairly moderate, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. Just in terms of, we are at the point now, tell me if you agree or disagree, I think we're at the point now in Arkansas where I can't really talk about the pitfalls of big government when it comes to welfare programs or dependency, or who really is the truly needy. We can't really have, I don't think, policy conversations the way we need to about tax policy, about regulatory reform, because at this point, I don't trust any of them to not be making some sort of side deals that if they do kill a regulation, that they're not somehow getting money on the side for doing it, or there's something hidden that we don't understand.
Yep.
I mean, that's how bad it is. So instead of being able to have these debates about how we govern ourselves right now, I think both Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Conservatives, Liberals, whatever you want to call them, we have to demand for honest government. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what Trump is kind of exposing here. I think that's why you're seeing such a shakeup in the status quo, is because I think it feels like our government at the national level is becoming a little bit more transparent, a little bit more honest, and I would love for that to happen here in the state of Arkansas. What are your thoughts on that, Lee?
Oh, man. Well, you're so right. Because we can't talk about anything else till we deal with the corruption. Like you said, we don't know what they're doing, and there may be more to come. And somehow Ballinger is at the center of all this, and nothing has came out that's 100% definitive evidence of criminal wrongdoing. And,
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back to this Claire McCaskill situation. I've got to actually read the story from the local affiliate. The fact that this is making local Missouri affiliates, this is from KMBC, it's an ABC affiliate, Channel 9. Kansas City, Missouri. The Missouri Senate race is blowing up over a hidden camera inside Democrat Claire McCaskill's campaign headquarters. In the video on conservative website Project Veritas, McCaskill staffers talked about Planned Parenthood donations reportedly being hidden. McCaskill's campaign said it will pursue legal action in connection with the incident. The campaign is also asking for Attorney General Josh Hawley, McCaskill's Republican opponent, to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate violations of the state's Merchandising Act. McCaskill staffer Nick Starost is heard speaking in the video, quote, "So what were you telling me last night about Planned Parenthood?" a voice behind the camera asked. How they don't donate to Claire because they don't want to ostracize pro-life Democrats in Missouri. Grace Richardson, another staffer, is seen on the video stating, "They go through other means to support and give money. They just don't directly give money from their PACs." Project Veritas said the video was shot recently at the McCaskill campaign office in Columbia. Veritas's president, James O'Keefe, appears in the video on a set looking like a McCaskill office. O'Keefe will not say if the recording is from a paid member of the campaign staff or a volunteer. In a statement, McCaskill said she's never seen anything like this in a Missouri Senate race. Quote, "It's startling that Josh Hawley would embrace fraudulently embedding somebody in my campaign. He is the Attorney General of Missouri. He's supposed to be going after fraud, not applauding it. I have been very upfront about all my positions. So McCaskill's response is that somehow James O'Keefe works for Hawley, and this has been totally endorsed and ordered by the campaign. And James O'Keefe denies that there's any coordination between himself and the Hawley campaign, calling the report a story that McCaskill hides her true views from voters to get elected. McCaskill's campaign manager said Planned Parenthood has given McCaskill. Now listen to this. Listen to this. McCaskill's campaign manager comes out to respond to clear the record about how Planned Parenthood, are they overt in their support or are they covert in their support? And McCaskill's campaign manager comes out and says that Planned Parenthood has given McCaskill at least $5,000 during the campaign, and that was reported, not hidden. Well, I'm sure that's going to help them then, right? So they've come out and they've admitted that, oh, yeah, we take money from the baby killers. Yeah, we do, yeah. Yeah, I'm Claire McCaskill. I represent your values, pro-life Democrats. The McCaskill campaign will not say if it thinks the recording was made by a staffer or a volunteer either. Campaign manager David Kirby said it was, quote, some 25-year-olds who didn't know what they were talking about, end quote. And there you go. That's what's going on in Missouri to our good friends from the north. Our good friends up from the north. You know, McCaskill would have been gone last time. She would have been gone 6 years ago if it wasn't for some Republican who made some comment about legitimate rape. Yeah, I know. Yeah. She would have been gone a long time ago, but the Republicans, there's some guy that made some comment about legitimate rape, Now, what's funny is how we've changed over in the last 6 years, how far we've come. Because, I got a feeling that if President Trump came out and said something, isn't that what we had just went through? Nobody used the phrase legitimate rape with Christine Blasey Ford or anything. Everybody else was they're very much like, very compelling. Sure, something happened to her, but it wasn't Kavanaugh that did anything. They never actually came out and said, I guess, legitimate rape. Of course, in the media right now, they're trying to ignore the fact that Elizabeth Warren is not Pocahontas. In order to ignore that fact, they're focusing on a Trump that President tweeted when it was discovered that a judge ruled against Stormy Daniels and her suit. They threw out, and then they said that Stormy Daniels has got to pay for Trump's legal fees, which means that all these people on the left that have contributed to her GoFundMe page. Joe, have you heard about this? All these people on the left that contributed to Stormy Daniels' legal defense fund are paying for Donald Trump's legal fees now because the judge ordered them to do so when he threw the case out. So Trump gloating about him being found, about the judge throwing the case out, decides to call Stormy Daniels a horse face. And so the media, can you believe that President Trump called Stormy Daniels a horse face? Yeah. I think most people, number one, can believe it. It's like they think people don't know who Donald Trump is at this point. It's just hilarious. They just keep reporting on these, like, emotional reaction. Can you believe a horse face? Well, CNN, you did have done at this point multiple segments on the descriptions that Stormy Daniels wrote down about President Trump's private parts, okay? You've done multiple segments on that. Not to mention, I think it's like not nearly as bad for Trump. She has criticized his, and described his private parts, right, to everybody. And the president's response is to call her essentially ugly. Her president's response is essentially to be like, yeah, she's got a face like a horse. And the media is like, can you believe he said that? And I when I read the headline, I was like, yeah, actually, he could call her something a lot worse than that, considering what she is telling everybody about his, nether regions or whatever. So I didn't have a problem with it at all. Of course, the media certainly did. Speaking of Elizabeth Warren, Joe, go to this article. Don't I have a Pocahontas article pulled up? Doesn't an actual descendant of Pocahontas? Oh, yeah. Let's read this one. Throw this one up there. Found out, according to this Breitbart article, that 3% of Elizabeth Warren's DNA is from an ancestor who rounded up Cherokees for the Trail of Tears. This is too much. Breitbart News first reported in 2012 that Senator Elizabeth Warren's great-great-great-grandfather, Jonathan Crawford, was a member of the Tennessee militia that rounded up Cherokees living there at the time for the Trail of Tears journey to Oklahoma in the 1830s. This gives Warren a 1/32nd or 3.125% Tennessee militia heritage, at least double the maximum 1.56%, minimum 0.1% Native American heritage. Dr. Carlos Bustamante said the evidence in the DNA genotypes purported to come from Warren's DNA sample strongly suggests in his October 10th, 2018 report released by Senator Warren on Monday. That was a long sentence. In the more than 30 years since she first claimed Native American ancestry, Warren has failed to produce a single piece of credible historical documentary evidence to support that claim. The release of the DNA report on Monday was the first time she presented what she purports to be genetic evidence to support the claim. It's because she's running for president and she wants to get out in front of this, but I think she's done a terrible job because she's won 1,000, well, anywhere between 164th and 1,024th Native American. The Cherokee Nation has come out and are now criticizing Elizabeth Warren. We told you about that, right? But not only that, there's a actual ancestor of Pocahontas. Joe, go to the next story. An actual ancestor of Pocahontas. A descendant is upset with Elizabeth Warren. Now, look at the photo there. Look at the contrast there. You've got a blonde white lady next to a... with really blue eyes. Yeah, she does have... But she's got those high cheekbones, though, Joe. She got those high cheekbones. You know what that means. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Joe says, because no other race has high cheekbones. There's no other... All right, so look, contrast this descendant of Pocahontas who looks much more like, if you're going to say, which one is a descendant of a Native American? Well, which one are you going to choose, folks? Which one are you going to choose? You're going to choose the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pasty white lady, or you're going to choose the dark-haired, just say dark-haired woman. I mean, that's all you got to. That's all you got to know. All right, so scroll down. Let me read this here, because I don't have this one. Let's see here. Pocahontas descendant. Her name is Debbie White Dove Poriso, or Pareco, has called on Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren to apologize for using claims of Native American heritage to advance her political career. Pareco, who claims to be able to trace her lineage to historical figure Pocahontas, told Fox News that she believes her fellow Native Americans feel betrayed by Warren's use of their heritage and culture as a platform for her political ambitions. It wasn't just her political ambitions, though. It's her actual career. I mean, this woman was given special treatment and praise for being a minority when she was at her, working at her college for, being a Native American. Cherokee Nation Secretary of State Chuck Hoskin Jr. said Warren's DNA test, quote, dishonors legitimate tribal governments and citizens whose ancestors are well documented and whose heritage is proven. Senator Warren is undermining tribal interests with her continued claims of tribal heritage. It just gets worse and worse for this woman. Worse and worse for this woman. Then, of course, you have the meme. I'm gonna cite this meme again because it's a must, right? Have you seen the meme about the Jeep Cherokee? I bought a new Jeep and named it Elizabeth Warren because it's all white, but it says Cherokee on the side. So if are there any listen, that'd be great. I would love to hear from you. If there are any owners / drivers of white Grand Cherokees, you have a conversation piece right now. You could strike up any conversation with anybody. Be like, hey, look, this is my Jeep Grand Cherokee. I call it Elizabeth Warren. The phone number is 870-275-9799. There is a U.S. Treasury official who's been arrested for leaking Manafort documents. In the latest indication of the Trump administration's efforts to root out alleged leakers, this is from Zero Hedge, a senior Treasury Department official working in the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, Natalie Mayflower Sowers Edwards, has been charged with leaking confidential financial reports to the media concerning former Trump campaign advisors Paul Manafort and Richard Gates. According to The Hill, prosecutors say that Natalie Mayflower Sowers Edwards, a senior advisor to FinCEN, photographed what are called suspicious activity reports, or SARS, and other sensitive government files and sent them to an unnamed reporter in violation of the U.S. law. They don't name the reporter in the reports or in the charges, but they do cite BuzzFeed articles. So assuming that that means that BuzzFeed is implicated. Of course, BuzzFeed is also the only outlet that ran with the phony PP dossier, where they had basically we now know Christopher Steele, a Democratic Party, former MI6 agent, but the Democrat Party essentially paid for the research to get the dossier, you know what I mean? The fake urination or the urination on prostitutes or whatever. So anyway, can you believe what just came out of my mouth? Can you believe that this is this is what we're talking about? Is that not weird to anybody out there? It's crazy. And it's all projection because you're supposed to be outraged because the Democrats are decent people. The Democrats are the party of decency, right? And it's like, you guys lie to us constantly. You deceive us intentionally. You stand up for the parts of this country like Planned Parenthood that are just the worst, You guys want to see us divided more than ever. You don't want any sort of reconciliation, right? You remember when you had the terrible Charleston shooting, and when the guy walked into the church, and he was a white guy, and he had photos online of him with the Confederate battle flag in the background, right? And they arrest this guy. They're arraigning him. They're in the courtroom, and he's on one screen, and then the family and the church is on the other, and they pray for him and they forgive him in the name of Jesus. They want him to know. They want the guy that has just walked into a church and murdered their friends and their family, that there is still hope and reconciliation with what he had done. Do you remember that moment? Do you remember that there was an MSNBC reporter when the community all came together? You had the guy being forgiven essentially in the courtroom, and you had everybody outside on the streets coming together singing hymns, and the MSNBC reporter, while they're reporting it, starts to cry. And this was on a Thursday or a Friday. And I thought to myself, oh, wow, first of all, what an amazing moment, right? But I said, media can't have this. They can't have it. They can't have reconciliation. This is supposed to be about a white racist that goes into a black church and kills people. They have to have division. Do you remember this? You can go look it up. Go look up MSNBC reporter crying. Go look up the reports where these people were in there forgiving him. And what did the media do? They panned the camera, and I'm not saying literally, but they basically just said, hey, doesn't South Carolina fly the Confederate battle flag on their capital someplace? Oh, that needs to come down. And then all these people from outside of South Carolina started coming in. Your Jesse Jacksons and Al Sharptons, right? It's an outrage. Can you believe this? And what was a glimpse of people coming together in the midst of tragedy and was a moment of reconciliation was absolutely destroyed by the mainstream media because they want us divided. And they want you to think that they're somehow the standard bearers of decency when it comes to what's going on today and their outrage, their moral outrage at Donald Trump or whatever some Republican did today. It's a joke. They're an embarrassment. The left wouldn't have standards if it weren't for double standards, and that likewise goes with the mainstream media for the most part. The Associated Press inventing a term called white Hispanic when George Zimmerman shot Trayvon Martin. They find out that George Zimmerman is an actual Hispanic. He's Hispanic. So they coined the term white Hispanic in the Associated Press report, and everybody runs with it. So it was a white guy that shot a black guy because he was black. Do you remember that? Why? Because we have to take it. We have to divide and conquer. And they want us divided. And I think the media and I think the Democrat Party are in for a shock come November 7th. The day after we vote on November 6th, I think they're in for a shock because I hope, I pray that there are people that are realizing that what Kanye West said in the White House isn't the rantings of a madman. That's somebody saying, listen, I think we'd be better off getting along and focusing on what we can agree on than what we disagree on. And I'm just a little tired of everybody trying to control the black community by screaming racism, racism, racism all the time. Let's hope. Let's hope that this country decides to work together in the concept of let's do we all want jobs? Yeah, we want jobs. Do we want a good economy? Yeah, we'd like a good economy. Do we want to treat people the way that we would want to be treated? Yeah, we want to try to attempt to do those things. Does that mean there's never going to be disagreements? Does that mean there's never going to... No. We're not going to solve all that. We don't have the ability to end disagreements with people. But we can at least attempt to look at this thing, practically, objectively, instead of trying to divide everybody all the time based on color or based on socioeconomic status. It's in the left and the media. If you're rich, you probably got that way because you took advantage of somebody at some point. No, that's not true at all. Are there people that are rich because they're greedy and take advantage? Yeah. But not everybody's like that. We're going to take a break. That's my rant for today. And we'll be back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive.
Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
I have to emphasize that. But, you guys have done some great reporting on Senate Bill 5 that he sponsored, which also Hutchison sponsored in the House, who is currently under indictment, which got rid of your right to a jury trial pre-dispute when signing a finance contract. So that means if you don't read the little fine print when you sign any kind of finance contract in Arkansas, you don't have any right to a jury trial if something happens related to that contract. And, I've had a little pushback from people saying, hey, I should be able to sign my jury rights away. Okay, that's fine if that's how you feel. But in my opinion, the Arkansas Constitution, it protects your right to a jury trial inviolate.
So
all the way.
You think maybe that legislation was maybe predatory?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like
I think it's there for the nursing home industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's preying. Well, I know Jerry
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Jackie on Facebook. They just want to burn the world down. The question is, who will be left on top? Yeah, that's true. It's like that the Batman movie. Dark Knight, right? Some men just want to watch the world burn. Okay. Coming up, we got State Representative Mark Lowry at 7:05. And we got Supreme Court candidate for Arkansas Supreme Court, David Sterling, coming up at 7:33. You don't want to miss any of that stuff. Speaking of justices, we've got 5 justices filed in own court to scrap a case. Bid to toss an ethics charge sets the stage for mass recusal. So 5 of the 7 members of the Arkansas Supreme Court sought to dismiss ethics charges against themselves in a petition filed in their own court, setting the stage for a mass recusal of the state's top state judges. The ethics charges and the justices' move to clear themselves of wrongdoing come in the court's ongoing feud with Pulaski County Circuit Judge Wendell Griffin. They basically said, hey, Wendell, you can't hear any more death penalty cases because you're a judge and you went to a death penalty protest and you posed in some sort of tableau where you lied down on a cot and acted like you were dead. And they think that shows that you're a little impartial, that you disagree with the death penalty. I'm sorry, that you are partial and you disagree with the death penalty, so you shouldn't be, you're no longer able to, decide in a fair way. That's the argument. Of course, now there's ethics charges against the Supreme Court of Arkansas. So somebody's going to have to mediate this, and it can't be the justices themselves. So you're going to have to appoint temporary judges in this case, and it's a mess. It's a mess is what it is. Also, we got Asa Hutchinson successfully got a Democrat Party ad attacking Asa over the corruption that's gone on in this state, pulled off of the air because the Democrat Party of Arkansas was trying to kind of pull a fast one, is what it looks like, and spend more money than they were allowed to spend over the maximum, $2,700 a PAC can contribute, or anyway, whatever the funding limit is. Anyway, we'll be right back with State Representative Mark Lowry. Don't go anywhere.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
He tried to stop them from being able to insert that into nursing home contracts. I think he successfully got them to take that out, but it's still stuck for the financial institutions.
Oh, well, that's good. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Well, God bless him. I'm glad he did that. And that's a big deal. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of stuff that Ballinger's involved with. And you've done great reporting, and you've questioned him yourself on it. And I don't even like to have to run this kind of political campaign where it looks like I'm attacking or smearing somebody. I'm not. These are verifiable sourced facts, not just from you.
Yeah.
This is from a lot of different media organizations throughout Arkansas.
Well, it can be an attack and not a smear. I would separate those two. I mean, I think
fair.
I think you have to, everything's going to be perceived based on who what your perspective is. If you're the recipient, if you're not. But yeah, the fact is, talk a little bit about this, because we still really don't know what's going to happen with what we're going to find out with the Ecclesia College thing. You had all these legislators giving all of this money to Ecclesia College. You got 3 people behind bars as a result of that. And we still don't know exactly what all that taxpayer money, like, we haven't done an audit. We don't really know what's going to happen and that sort of thing. And
why haven't we done an audit yet?
Well, it's a great question. I think there may be some movement to try to get some information at this point, but it just doesn't seem right. And the fact that all this was done, this is what's so sad to me, is that ecclesia is a Greek word for church. This is a Christian institution that we're having text messages about whether or not they need to use the medical marijuana fund, which they thought would have been evil, but they're going to use evil for good, and direct all that tax money to college. And I know as a libertarian, we can talk about marijuana, but you know what I mean? It was just it was like the college itself was no different than the schemes that we read about in government,
Oh, it's not. And they're using the color of religion, the politicians, and I guess the college to dupe people, and that's so wrong on so many levels. Arkansas is a Christian state, and it really, really bothers me that they're using that to just hustle this money in from the taxpayers. So obviously, I'm against all kinds of gift funds. Legislators should not just have access to money like that to do whatever they want with. All money needs to be voted on and debated on. Every single cent.
I agree.
And I know you agree with that.
Yeah.
I loved what Brian King had in there. He had this great Medicaid disclosure bill that would have helped big time. Ballinger killed it at the last second. And you've done good reporting on that too again. So, it's I could go on and on. The corruption is just crazy. And yeah, we can talk about marijuana, sure. You probably know how I feel. I don't want any kind of rules on it. We don't need a medical marijuana commission. And it's just kind of funny that Ballinger's law partner, Travis Story, is on the commission. And Ballinger's getting all these donations from, and you can look it up. Anybody can look this up. He's getting donations from these dispensaries. And they're somehow getting approved. And I want to backtrack a little bit. I don't know if they got approved or not, but he has gotten donations from them. It's just there's so much funny business going on. We've just really got to vote out all incumbents, get some people up there with a good head on their shoulders. I'm committed to routing out this corruption in the Capitol however I can and wherever I can, because this is my state. This is where I grew up. This is all my friends and family are all in Arkansas. And it's just become insane, the amount of corruption. And, it's sad. A lot of people still don't know about it. Ballinger is going around his district and talking to people, and that's good. That's good. He should be allowed to do that, of course, but a lot of people just aren't aware of this stuff.
Yeah,
unfortunately. I don't know how.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when you have we have a mainstream media here, Lee, that that they'll do a story, when they have to about the corruption, but they're not necessarily beating down the doors of the legislature asking them, hey, are you a consultant with anybody else? Are you being paid extra? They're not really.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the program. This is hour number 2, hour number 1. You can get it over at conduitnews.com. If you missed it, we talked about a lot of things, the violence of the left, the anarchists. We compared the modern-day Antifa movement to its precursor, which is Occupy Wall Street. I haven't heard anybody really make that connection, but that was the first glimpse into the badness of the left. Also talked about this Treasury Department official getting nabbed, as well as Claire McCaskill now calling for an investigation because somebody actually did an act of journalism and exposed her for who she is. All that was in the first hour. Folks, welcome back to the program. We have the state representative from, I think it's District 39, I believe. State Representative Mark Lowry is on the phone. Mark, how are you this morning?
I'm fine. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good. Is it 38 or 39?
39.
39, just making sure. Now, go ahead and tell our audience once again the geographic boundaries of that district.
The geographic boundaries, District 39 mostly takes up Maumelle. There's one little couple of subdivisions that are not in the district, which are represented by Representative Doug House. And then my district also takes in the Marche, Morgan, Oak Grove, and then goes into Amboy just outside Camp Robinson. So
okay.
It's a very interesting district. I really have enjoyed representing them for 6 years.
Well, so Mark, what do you think the stakes of this election are? I mean, I know you do have a Democrat opponent, and we've obviously got a lot of Republican enthusiasm after the last couple of weeks, seeing what the Democrat tactics are nationally. What are your thoughts on the importance of this race?
Well, I think the stakes are high. Just even looking at the numbers in the House and the Senate, we need to maintain our supermajority so that the Democrats that are there are not able to be obstructionist in terms of us taking on budget issues and taking on even appropriation bills. Can't be passed unless you have a three-quarters majority. And so we don't need to be in a position where we drop below that and that the Democrats can kind of hold us hostage. But I think the more important area specifically to my race is that, we just need to stay the course. I've been a strong representative for this district. I've supported the $150 million in tax cuts. I've supported this area in their desire to someday have its own school district and any number of other issues. I mean, I've been glad to be one who's kind of drawn a target on me because of my support for voter ID. And we need to reward those things. If we don't, then I think it possibly makes legislators timid about taking on the tough issues that they and that they would want to shy away from it. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to send a message, stick your neck out and it's going to get chopped off.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are excited and also kind of shocked that we don't have voter ID. I mean, I know we've tried to make a go at this a couple of times, and this is a response to the Supreme Court, saying, hey, look, the voter ID law you passed is unconstitutional. Okay, so we're going to change the Constitution then. And I think most people think that you should have to show an ID in order to vote.
Well, absolutely. Paul, in politics, there are very few issues where 70% plus of the voters agree with the position. And this is one of them. There are only 20%. This is Arkansas polling. Gallup polling pretty much tracks about the same. But Arkansas polling shows that only 20% of Arkansans oppose voter ID. And when you break down the Gallup numbers, you find out that, even 77% of minorities favor voter ID because they understand how important it is to protect the integrity of the ballot. So this is just this is a no-brainer. I'm glad the Supreme Court upheld the law that we passed in the legislature in 17. Obviously, I believe the constitutional amendment is also going to be passed, and then we will just, in formulating the final law and the regulations that govern it, will put in some of the same provisions that the Supreme Court upheld in the law for the 17 bill.
We're talking with State Representative Mark Lowry. He is the Republican from District 39. And those of you who are listening on 101.1 The Answer out of Little Rock, this is, this encompasses that district. And, you mentioned, Mark, about needing to maintain a supermajority in the House of Representatives. We had that last time, and then through some procedural maneuvers, we ended up having a whole lot of Democrats on one committee, and that committee ended up being the most, one of the most powerful committees down there, which is the House Committee on Revenue and Taxation. Do you anticipate something like that happening again?
No, it will not. I had been working with the Speaker, Speaker Gillum then, of coming up with a system that would basically cap the number. If you are the minority party, it would place a cap on the number of members that you could have on a committee. It would not strictly be an apportioned membership. But in that process of the Speaker investigating what other states have done, a rule was initiated where the Speaker, who is now Matt Shepard, will actually be naming who's going to be on each committee. And so I think, I know that Speaker Shepard is going to be fair. He's had meetings with all the members that possibly will be coming back, and I'm sure he'll be meeting with those who get elected in this cycle. I don't anticipate that there would be any concern like that.
I know this may not be necessarily true for, your district in 39 and other districts, or just generally in the state of Arkansas, because we are a conservative state. We are and have been for several cycles now. A lot of people just punching that ticket on the right side, on the red side. And I can talk about how, we need to, make sure we adhere to the platform and everything else. But I don't necessarily want to go into that. I just like to hear from you nationally. It does seem that we're very divided as a country, and I'm just curious, have you ever seen the political rhetoric where it is now on these issues?
I've been around politics since the mid-'80s. I first ran for the legislature back in '84 against a longtime incumbent Democrat. Of course, that was back in the days before there really was.
By the way, that was the year I was born. I just thought I'd throw that out there. You're welcome. You're welcome, sir. You're welcome. Go ahead.
So I've been around a while, and I've never seen it so divisive. I mean, frankly, even in the race that I had in '84 and '86 with the same incumbent, we still had the ability to be able to come together. There were some very pointed exchanges, and I'm proud to say now that all these many years later, Representative Doug Wood, who I ran against then, is now a supporter of mine in my re-election bid this time. He doesn't live in my district, but he has been so kind to be very supportive of my efforts. So, I wish we could go back to those days. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it's going to take. The division, the violence, frankly, it's untenable for us moving forward. And we don't see this. I don't I don't believe we don't see this in Arkansas. We don't see it at the legislature. We are able to work across the aisle. But we also need to maintain and understand that we have different principles from the Democrats that are in the legislature. And they are not with us on tax cuts. They are not with us on making government accountable and making government leaner. And so we just need to be careful not to overreact trying to get along and then lose our bearings.
I completely agree with that. We're talking with State Representative Mark Lowry. Can you bring it back down to Arkansas focused, the corruption that's in the headlines? You got any plans? You talk with any of your colleagues about maybe codifying some of this ethics reform that they've been talking about, actually putting some teeth into it?
Well, the real critical issue when it comes to the legislature on voting on issues are these unreported conflicts of interest, especially where it applies to legislators who might be a consultant or they may be an attorney, and firms that have political interest are able to just pay a retainer to the attorney's law firm, and it's never reported because on the SFI, the Statement of Financial Interest, the attorney just shows that they got compensation from their law firm, not who their clients are. So I think revealing who those clients are is one step, but that doesn't go far enough. The disclosure, for you to step up and go, okay, well, I just want y'all to know this bill that we're going to be discussing here, I do have this conflict here, but then to proceed to participate in the discussion and the vote is wrong. The legislator should have to recuse. Now, the problem with that, though, is, we do have a citizen legislature. So does that mean that if we have a legislator who is a farmer, that any agricultural issue that comes up, they're going to have to recuse? We could probably find any kind of tenuous conflicts that, various legislators would have, and we want their expertise on those areas. I don't know the first thing about farming, so I would want to know the expertise of that legislator. So, this is something it's significant, but we want to make sure that we don't have a knee-jerk reaction and go too far. But I think that there is a resolve right now that we have got to at least have more transparency on these potential conflicts. And one of the things I really regret the most is that a few bad apples were able to totally ruin a system of being able to, the GIF funds. I've been able, over the last 6 years, been able to give grants to food banks and to neighborhood associations, crime watch groups, charter schools to help them be able to transport students to the charter school. City of Maumelle being able to be more transparent in videotaping or videoing their councilman meetings. There was good that came from GIF, but unfortunately a few bad apples actually ruined that whole process.
Yeah, and I think it was just how I don't know how bold they were, and that was the other thing, it might have been, and I think it's a lot more than anybody's comfortable with, but yeah, it's not a majority of you guys down there that are stealing from the taxpayers, but it was the way they did it and how bold they were in their schemes. I think that's what's so outrageous.
Well, it absolutely is, and it's when I first went into the legislature, I wasn't quite sure how I felt about General Improvement Fund grants. Some people labeled it as pork barrel, but I just have to say that the organizations that I was able to help were organizations that they can't afford grant writers. They can't afford to apply for federal state grants. And this was an opportunity for me, who's closest to what's going on in my district, to be able to identify a volunteer fire department that needs some extra equipment, or, as I mentioned, the food bank that needs a grant.
Yeah.
And so it's unfortunate that's gone away, but it's mostly unfortunate that we've had people who had the public trust and they violated that.
Yeah. Yeah. State Representative Mark Lowry, I wish you the best of luck. Early voting is, it starts Tuesday, and I'll give you the last word, sir, whatever message you want to send, want to leave with your constituents who are listening.
Well, I have so appreciated the opportunity to represent this district for the last 3 terms. My service has been on the Education Committee. We've had a number of great positive strides forward, and the college funding formula, outcomes-based. The governor asked me to support that, and I just want to ask the people of my district to allow me to continue. We need to stay the course, continue the tax cuts, continue this all of the efforts to streamline government. This is not a time for us to be putting in new folks that really don't understand this process of, frankly, having to wrestle with the bureaucrats. It takes a while to get to know that. So I hope my district will return me and be able to benefit from the seniority that I have in the House.
All right, State Representative Mark Lowry, you have a great day, sir. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Folks, we're going to take a break. The number 870-275-9799. And we've got Mr. David Sterling coming up at 7:33, Supreme Court candidate for the Arkansas Supreme Court. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Not just from you.
Yeah.
This is from a lot of different media organizations throughout Arkansas.
Well, it can be an attack and not a smear. I would separate those two. I mean, I think
fair.
I think you have to, everything's going to be perceived based on who what your perspective is. If you're the recipient, if you're not. But yeah, the fact is, talk a little bit about this, because we still really don't know what's going to happen with what we're going to find out with the Ecclesia College thing. You had all these legislators giving all of this money to Ecclesia College. You got 3 people behind bars as a result of that. And we still don't know exactly what all that taxpayer money, like, we haven't done an audit. We don't really know what's going to happen and that sort of thing. And
why haven't we done an audit yet?
Well, it's a great question. I think there may be some movement to try to get some information at this point, but it just doesn't.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News, the parent. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs, as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So in other Arkansas news, Arkansas Democrat Party pulling their advertisements. Asa Hutchinson campaign threatened them with an ethics complaint, saying they were in violation of the law because they spent $15,000 on radio ads, which is over the contribution limit of $2,700 that you can spend on each candidate. So they pulled the ads. What were the ads, by the way? The ads were supporting Democrat candidate for governor Jared Henderson, but they were basically citing the fact that Arkansas has got so much of this corruption going on, and they were putting it at the feet of Asa. You know what I mean? I'm surprised it took the Democrats this long. I mean, and that's what's been so conspicuous is that they haven't really pounced on all this corruption. Makes you think that this whole thing, that there's probably a lot of Democrats that are worried they're going to get caught up in this as well. That's just a speculation of mine, but that's just kind of the way. You were having these articles, these praise articles. Remember the governor? I made the observation that, well, this is Asa Hutchinson's Republican Party now. Here in Arkansas, this is Asa's party, but there was never any talk of any of the blame about about knowing all this stuff is going on. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's so sad about this, is that there are people who've been in the leadership that did know this was going on, and they didn't tattle on their friends. They didn't file the ethics complaint. Oh, but now that everybody knows about it, we promise that we will. And that's just, I don't know. That's a tough pill to swallow for me, especially when the current leadership still wants to be held up as credible to now lead us out of this mess. I think we need new leadership. That's just my opinion. We have this report, let's see, kind of transitioning from little old Arkansas to geopolitical crisis. Headline here, U.S. intelligence increasingly convinced that Saudi prince ordered Khashoggi's killing. This is from Zero Hedge. By now, there's little doubt that Jamal Khashoggi is dead. This despite reports that surfaced in the Daily Mail and a handful of other outlets last week claiming that Khashoggi was alive and had been renditioned to Saudi Arabia. And while the Turkish government has publicly assured the Saudis that they will pursue a cautious, thorough, and transparent investigation, even inviting the Saudis to join as a partner in the probe, behind-the-scenes Turkish media, which is tightly controlled, by the way, they've spread details about the gruesome execution they say occurred in the office of the now former Saudi consul. What's more, a leak last Wednesday already suggested that the U.S. knew about the Saudis' plans to ambush Khashoggi, though whether the U.S. intercepts detailed a murder plot or merely a plan to interrogate and rendition the government insider turned critic remains unclear. If anything, the one thing that now appears certain about the situation is that in a maneuver that's reminiscent of the declassification of an intelligence community report blaming Russia for the interfering in the 2016 election, the U.S. intelligence community is once again rebelling against the Trump White House after Trump suggested that he would do everything he could to preserve the U.S.-Saudi relationship, reportedly fearful of losing Saudi cooperation in the plot to undermine Iran, and has effectively joined with the Turks to undermine the rule of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The latest example of this appears in Thursday's New York Times when a trio of national security reporters published a piece claiming that the U.S. intelligence agencies have been increasingly convinced that Mohammed bin Salman directly ordered Khashoggi's killing, claims that were admittedly not based on anything other than circumstantial evidence by the reporters' own admissions. What do you think? What do you think? Isn't it interesting? President Trump has this relationship with the Saudi prince. going to help us undermine Iran. You know, remember, the international community can't stand the fact that we canceled the Iran deal.
Not just from you.
Yeah.
This is from a lot of different media organizations throughout Arkansas.
Well, you know, it can be an attack and not a smear. I would separate those two. I mean, I think
fair.
I think you have to, you know, I mean, everything's going to be perceived based on, you know, who what your perspective is. If you're the recipient, if you're not. But yeah, the fact is, I mean, talk a little bit about this, because we still really don't know what's going to happen with what we're going to find out with the Ecclesia College thing. You had all these legislators giving all of this money to Ecclesia College. You got 3 people behind bars as a result of that. And we still don't know exactly what all that taxpayer money, like, we haven't done an audit. We don't really know what's going to happen and that sort of thing. And
why haven't we done an audit yet?
Well, it's a great question. I think there may be some movement to try to get some information at this point, but you know, it just doesn't seem right. And the fact that, you know, all this was done, this is what's so sad to me, is that ecclesia is a Greek word for church. You know, this is a Christian institution that we're having text messages about whether or not they need to use the, you know, medical marijuana fund, which they thought would have been evil, but they're going to use evil for good, you know, and direct all that tax money to you know, college. And I know as a libertarian, you know, we can talk about marijuana, but you know what I mean? It was just it was like the college itself was no different than the schemes that we read about in government, you know?
Oh, it's not. And they're using the color of religion, the politicians, and I guess the college to dupe people, and that's so wrong on so many levels. You know, Arkansas is a Christian state, and it really bothers me that they're using that to just hustle this money in from the taxpayers. So I mean, obviously, I'm against all kinds of gift funds. Legislators should not just have access to money like that to do whatever they want with. All money needs to be voted on and debated on. Every single cent.
I agree.
And I know you agree with that.
Yeah.
You know, I loved what Brian King had in there. He had this great Medicaid disclosure bill that would have helped big time. Ballinger killed it at the last second. And you've done good reporting on that too again. So, I mean, it's, you know, I could go on and on. The corruption is just crazy. And yeah, we can talk about marijuana, sure. You probably know how I feel. I don't want any kind of rules on it. We don't need a medical marijuana commission. And it's just kind of funny that Ballinger's law partner, Travis Story, is on the commission. And
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you want to contribute. That's 870-275-9799. You can call or text. Sound off on Facebook.com/Conduit News or the YouTube channel. Let's welcome back to the program. We have candidate for the Arkansas Supreme Court. Mr. David Sterling is back with us. David, good morning to you. How you been?
Good morning. Thank you guys for having me on. I'm doing great this morning.
Awesome. How's the campaign going?
It's going well, Just, you know, working real hard out here on the campaign trail. I mean, it is a statewide race, and it can be exhausting. I'm glad to have the support of my wife and my daughter out here on the campaign trail. I mean, I'm kind of having to divide and conquer as we have multiple campaign events all over the state. But, I mean, it's exhausting, but at the same time, it's very energizing getting out there and meeting all the voters and getting a lot of encouragement and support from all over the state.
Yeah. You know, it just kind of dawned on me. I mean, I know you're running against, you know, an incumbent justice, but there's probably most people that don't even know, you know, who the Supreme Court is, you know, and so in a lot of ways, you know, these statewide races, it's kind of anybody's game. And I mean, the power of incumbency is a big deal, but I do think that, you know, this is a way for you to meet folks and say, hey, you know, vote for me. And I think a lot of people will, because they don't really know who the Supreme Court is made up of right now.
Well, it's a good point, and you're right. A lot of people don't really understand how it's structured, but I mean, there are 7 justices on the Supreme Court, and the terms that we're elected to, or I'm hoping to be elected to, they're 8-year terms. And so, but the terms are staggered to try to lend some stability to the court, where there's not a massive turnover in any particular year. And this year, the person that's up for re-election is Justice Courtney Goodson, and that's who I'm running against.
So what do you hear? I mean, when you talk to folks on the campaign trail, what do they think about generally the judicial branch of government? Do they have complaints? Do they have praises?
Well, I think in general, I think people are concerned about the judicial branch. I mean, I think that the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh kind of brought everything to the forefront as far as how important the third branch of government is. People often focus on the legislative branch and the executive branch, and then they totally forget about the judicial branch, particularly in Arkansas. I mean, it's almost like you said, no one really knows who they are. I mean, we've got a Chief Justice, Dan Kemp, who my opponent ran against for Chief Justice 2 years ago, and when she lost that race, she had to go back and finish out her the last 2 years of her term, and those come to an end this year, just in a couple of months now, and that's why I'm running against her. But then you have, Justice Josephine Hart, Justice Karen Baker, Sean Womack, Rhonda Wood, and Robin Wynn, and that makes up the 7 of those. But most people haven't even heard those names before, because they're not out there out front like some of the legislators or the governor's, the governor is, and that sort of thing, and they just kind of get lost in the shuffle. But it's a very, very, very important branch of our government that really serves as a check and balance on the executive and the legislative branches.
We're talking with David Sterling. He's a candidate for the Arkansas Supreme Court. Now, David, I understand if you have to say, I can't comment on this or that because, these judicial races are technically nonpartisan. But, it's in the news today. Reminding us that there's this ethics issue with the Supreme Court right now because of what they said to a lower judge, Wendell Griffin, about not being able to rule on death penalty cases because he participated in some sort of naturalist tableau theater at a anti-death penalty protest. Do you have any thoughts on that? Can you comment on what your take on the situation is?
Well, I think it's probably best for me not to comment on it, only in the sense that I don't know how soon there will be a hearing on that, but a lot of times these cases get filed. They, as far as an appeal filed, then there will be a briefing schedule. And in this particular case, there's going to have to be a number of recusals because 5 of the 7 justices are challenging those charges and appealing those. And it may be a couple months before there's any hearing on this. I'm not sure what the schedule is going to be, but hopefully I'll be on the court at that time, and it'll be one less recusal if I don't comment on it right now.
I gotcha. Yeah, and I figured that was the case. If you win, then you'll have to be ruling on this. So, again, we're talking with David Sterling. Okay, let's talk about judicial philosophy. Now, in my opinion, there are 2 ways to look at the Constitution, whether it's Arkansas Constitution, the United States Constitution, or just law in general, and that's whether or not you believe in a concept of a living document where the words, when they were written, at whatever time they were written, can change over time. It's an idea that somehow human nature changes and evolves, and so these words that were meant, for another generation need to evolve as well. Versus another, there's the second one, which is the originalist intent, saying, hey, we need to be true to what the law says now because, it was written in a certain way, and we need to honor that. What are your thoughts on those 2 competing judicial philosophies?
Well, I'm definitely an originalist. I've been out here on the campaign trail all year, ever since late January, early February, talking about my judicial philosophy of what I call judicial conservatism, which is, again, different from political conservatism, but, from a judicial standpoint, it's based on the Constitution. I tell people I'm an originalist. I'm a textualist. I believe in judicial restraint. And I believe in separation of powers, and that there are three branches of government. You have the legislative branch that passes laws, the executive branch that enforces them, and the judicial branch that interprets them and applies the law to the facts and circumstances of each case in a fair and impartial way, and that judges should never legislate from the bench. They should leave that to the people and the people they elect to the legislative branch. But as far as the Constitution goes, I'm as much of an originalist as they come. And, I really have read a lot of the works of and the opinions of Justice Scalia. I think that, he really embodied originalism more than anybody else, and he articulated it better than anyone I've ever heard articulate it. And I'm definitely a student of Justice Scalia, and I wish he were still with us.
Yeah, I think we all do. We're talking again with David Sterling. He's a candidate for the Arkansas Supreme Court. You said something that I think a lot of people agree with, and it resonated just now, that you don't believe that the judicial branch should legislate from the bench. So the reverse of that, I'm curious, do you believe that the legislative branch should judge or make rulings from the State House? And what I don't. You get what I'm saying here? I'm specifically talking about, should the legislative branch be able to set rules of evidence for the court?
Oh, I see where you're going. You're talking about issue 1, man.
Well, I didn't want
to take me down that.
I did. I was thinking to myself, well, he can't maybe comment. Maybe he can't comment directly on issue 1, but maybe he can answer a specific. Anyway, you see where I was trying to do there.
I saw that one coming. Yeah, I better stay out of that fight for right now. I will tell you this. I mean, people have asked me pretty much all throughout the summer and fall about my stance on issue 1, and I tell people this. I mean, the voters of Arkansas are going to vote on November 6th whether to amend our Constitution with issue 1, or to not amend our Constitution by rejecting issue 1. I'm on the ballot on that same day, and I will take office if I'm elected on January 1st, and I will be true to the Constitution in either its amended form or its non-amended form, whether I take office on January 1st. So I'm going to let the people speak on that, and I promise the people that I will enforce the Constitution that I'm handed when I take office on January 1st.
All right. I think that would certainly go in line with your originalist constitutional philosophy. So I think that's good.
Well, it goes along with what you were saying just now, too. I mean, people ask me, the same question you're talking about as far as an originalist, or, if I believe that the Constitution is a living, breathing document. And I do, but only to the extent that the Constitution has provisions in it for amendment. And they shouldn't. And if you want to amend the Constitution, you do exactly what the people are doing right now with some of these issues that are on the ballot. And just following the methodology that is laid out in the Constitution itself as far as amending it. But I don't think that the Constitution should ever be amended by judicial fiat.
Mm-hmm. No, and I agree with you there. And I think that's one of the reasons we saw such a fight over the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings, because, the left's major victories, and I know this is getting political, but I'm just saying the left's major victories to me appear to come from an overactive judiciary, not so much legislative victories. And even when they have legislative victories like Obamacare, then the architects come out later and said, yeah, we had to lie to everybody to get this thing passed. So I think, the courts are very, certainly very important. And David, certainly, I'm really glad that I'm glad you decided to throw your hat in the ring, and, you're getting to know the folks of Arkansas. So, like, what's next for you on the campaign stop? Where are you going to be next?
Well, today I've actually taken a day off. That's been the challenging thing about this race, is I am a state employee still. I serve as chief counsel at the Arkansas Department of Human Services, where I've done that for the last 3.5 years, really, fighting for the most vulnerable citizens in our state. And but I've always got people. I've always got people looking over my shoulder, making sure that I'm not stepping out of line or anything like that as a state employee, not campaigning on state time and that sort of thing. And I've been very, very diligent making sure I don't do that. I've got to use personal leave for everything I do. So on the campaign trail. So today I've taken the day off. I'm going to head down to Hot Springs Village and meet with some voters down there at a political forum, candidates forum, and then I'm going to head over and cut a radio ad, and then head to Maumelle this evening. And there's a few other things on the campaign agenda today too that, you know, you're always picking and choosing. Every day there's probably 6 or 8 different things, but you know, it's challenging and being all over the state. I mean, just a few weeks ago, I was on a Wednesday night, I was in Helena over in East Arkansas. The next night on Thursday, I was down in Hope in Southwest Arkansas. The next day on Friday, I was back in Central Arkansas here in Little Rock for an event. Saturday morning, I woke up and headed down to Arkadelphia in Southwest Arkansas. Sunday, I was back here in Little Rock going to church and, you know, recharging my batteries. Monday, I was in Newport, Northeast Arkansas. Tuesday in Bentonville in extreme northwest Arkansas. Wednesday in Lake Village in extreme southeast Arkansas.
Wow.
Thursday in Fort Smith, and then Friday back in Little Rock. So, I mean, all that stuff is done, you know, on my own time, after hours, weekends, that sort of thing. But, I mean, it is a real strain on, you know, physically as well as mentally.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you get there and talking to the voters and talking to them about their concerns, talking to them about, you know, their visions for the judiciary, understanding my judicial philosophy and being very, very encouraging, and it's been great. And you know, and like I said, my wife and my daughter have been very, very supportive out there, helping me cover some of these events, and just being very supportive when I'm at home. And so it's been a very, very encouraging campaign so far, and we're down to the last few days of it right now. Just 3 more weeks. Early voting starts actually on Monday. And obviously Election Day, November 6th. So we're closing in on the last few days of this campaign, and I'm looking forward to November 7th.
I'm glad you said early voting starts on Monday, because I think earlier in the hour I said it started on Tuesday, and that's just because I'm just got November 6th stuck in my mind. David Sterling, really appreciate coming on the show. Got one last question, and I think it fits here, because you just talked about, you know, going everywhere and campaigning all across the state. There was talk, you know, 2 years ago, about getting rid of the election process, the democratic process of Supreme Court justices, and moving to an appointment-based system, where, you know, you have to kind of, well, what I would say, you have to climb the elite ladder to you know, to even get a shot of consideration, versus just letting the people decide. Where do you fall on that? Do you like things the way they are, or you think we should move to an appointment-based system?
Well, I believe in the Constitution. Our Constitution has judges being elected here in the state. And, you know, if the people want to change that at some point and move to an appointment process like some of the other states have, I'm fine with that. But honestly, this has been great, getting out here and actually meeting people and trying to convince them that my judicial philosophy is better than my opponent's judicial philosophy. Just, you know, one-on-one, hand-to-hand, you know, face-to-face, eye-to-eye, telling people about my judicial philosophy and giving them a choice, you know, versus another way of appointment where you just have to convince one person or a panel of people that your judicial philosophy is what should be on the court. And, you know, there's pros and cons no matter which way you go on this. I mean, if you do appointments, you see it on the federal level. I mean, those are lifetime appointments, and once a certain political party is in charge and they put somebody on the bench, they're there for the rest of their life. And there's, even if the political winds shift, they're still there. And that's a very good thing, but it also can be a very bad thing. So it just depends on your perspective on this. But I think that there's pros and cons to either one. And personally, I just support the one that the Constitution outlines in our state right now.
All right. David Sterling, Arkansas Supreme Court candidate. Early voting starts Monday. The election's November 6th. David, thank you so much for spending time with us, and you have a great day.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break. Going to reset here. The number 870-275-9799 if you want to contribute. Sound off over at facebook.com/Conduit News, and go to the YouTube page so you can get our smaller videos. That's Conduit News. Subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications. We'll be back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the 7th Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed roller lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Ballinger's getting all these donations from, and you can look it up. Anybody can look this up. He's getting donations from these dispensaries, and they're somehow getting approved. And I want to backtrack a little bit. I don't know if they got approved or not, but he has gotten donations from them. It's just there's so much funny business going on. We've just really got to vote out all incumbents, get some people up there with a good head on their shoulders. You know, I'm committed to routing out this corruption in the Capitol however I can and wherever I can, because this is my state. This is where I grew up. This is all my friends and family are all in Arkansas. And it's just become insane, the amount of corruption. And, you know, it's sad. A lot of people still don't know about it. Ballinger is going around his district and talking to people, and that's good. That's good. I mean, he should be allowed to do that, of course, but a lot of people just aren't aware of this stuff.
Yeah,
unfortunately, I don't know how.
Yeah, it's tough.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We're in the home stretch here. I want to remind you to go check out our first hour. We talked about Pocahontas. You know, there's an actual descendant of Pocahontas that's come out and criticizing Elizabeth Warren. We talked about that. Talked about that Antifa is the hotly anticipated sequel of Occupy Wall Street. Haven't really heard anybody reflect on that, but that just kind of came to me today. I couldn't believe that. Let's see, what else do we have here? Nancy Pelosi slams Trump's manhood issue. What is that about? Democrats. What's the Daily Caller? They've always got some good stuff here. Let's see. You got Congress on Trump and Russia. Jim Jordan. Congress's Trump-Russia task force gears up for interviews with 2 key witnesses. Republicans grew a backbone after Brett Kavanaugh hearings. I think that's true. I think most people would find that to be a true statement. Republicans, according to Anders Hagstrom, writes that Republicans let protesters hound them in the Capitol before Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation hearings. But then they started adopting the justices' aggressive defense style. Was it the justices' defense style? Was it Kavanaugh's defense style? Or was it President Trump's? I mean, to me, he's the puppet master here. He's the guy that's told basically by leading by example, that you don't have to listen to the media's fake outrage. You don't have to listen to their performances of how outraged they are, because it's just an act of manipulation. It's, at this point, used to be very successful, but at this point, it's just an attempt to manipulate their consumers to get an emotional reaction. And you don't have to dance to that beat, you know? The media and the Democrat Party, which are essentially the same, have been the DJs at a really, really bad party for a long time. The music has been just awful, not very artistic. You know, I mean, kind of like the, I don't know if you remember this, but, you know, you can put a cross in a jar of urine and put it on a pedestal, and you can call it art now. And that's not art at all. There's no artistic merit in it at all, but apparently that's what you call art. It's kind of music like that. That's what the media says. Dance to this music. And it's terrible. It has no rhythm. It's like, I don't know. It's just the worst. It's like some sort of, I don't know. Anyway, that's what they've been saying to do. And Donald Trump says, no, you know, I actually, you know, I like to dance to the beat of Lee Greenwood's Proud to be an American, or at least I know I'm free, you know. I like to dance to that beat. I like to slow dance to that song. 8th grade, junior high school style, slow dance. And that's what I'm going to dance to. Everybody's like, hey, I remember that song. And the media's like, no, dance to our terrible music. You know, that's misleading and, you know, put you to sleep, put you into a trance, you know, makes you like, I don't know, it's probably like some sort of weird, what's that music that people are listening to now? You know, it's not techno, but you know how you're waiting for the beat to drop? Is that dubstep? It's like a dubstep, the media, where they're like, you're constantly waiting for the beat to drop, but it never drops, and you just are mesmerized. And anyway. So Kavanaugh says, you know what? Donald Trump is aggressive. You hit him, he hits you harder. Kavanaugh comes out and he says, guys, this is about me personally, and you're talking about my family, and I'm coming at you as hard. I'm coming at you with everything I can to defend myself. And then the Republicans said, you know what? This is ridiculous. We are so sick and tired when the media is morally bankrupt, and yet then they claim moral superiority in their reporting. We're done playing your little game because, number one, Republicans can never win at it. Oh, yeah, they used to love, remember that? They used to love John McCain. The late John McCain would go on their programs, and they would love John McCain as a Republican until he ran for president. And then it's like, this guy's crazy. He's just an old white man who's probably racist. Anyway, when you call somebody an old white man, that's the connotation. So you don't have to actually say they're racist. The Daily Caller News Foundation's fact-check videos, Anders Hagstrom highlights claims from politicians and the media alike, setting the record straight on double standards and mischaracterizations. The Daily Caller News Foundation has torn down former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's infamous and much-peddled 17 intelligence agencies claim and exposed the liberal media for running damage control for Hamas. Check out a few of our greatest hits and subscribe to the Daily Caller and their YouTube channel. So the idea is that Republicans have somehow grown a backbone after the Kavanaugh hearings. Certainly Republican voter enthusiasm is up. And Elizabeth Warren certainly is probably, I would say Elizabeth Warren's DNA test that proves that she's not Native American. She's maybe 164th or 1024th Colombian, Mexican, Peruvian. I think that has just been a disaster for the Democrats, even more so, because when we are motivated and we're laughing at you, well, then it makes voting fun. It's like, yeah, let's go vote. Yeah, fire up charcoal grill. Honestly, I wish election days were national holidays. I really do. I wish early voting wasn't a thing, and I wish election days were national holidays. And you would get off work and you'd go tailgate and vote. That'd be fun. We'll see you tomorrow.